Dort again from the outside. Had a clean look, but that one swishes through. Giddey keeps it himself and takes it up as he glides with the finger roll.
Love that intro. Great stuff. Welcome to the Uncontested Postgame Podcast Edition. I am your host for tonight, Taylor Peterson. You can find me on Twitter at Taylor_P15. You can find us on Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook at @the_uncontested. Be sure to go and subscribe to all those different platforms. If you subscribe, if you actually go and leave us a 5-star review, send us a screenshot of that. And in addition, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, we're getting really close to 1,000 followers. So if you all would do that, send us a screenshot. We'll send you some really sweet stickers that our guy Justin put together for us. Really fun stuff. Just like this Thunder team. Another really fun game tonight as they end up dropping a 122-110 loss against the Denver Nuggets. But it was close. Before I get any further, we are a proud part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network and DailyThunder.com. And like I said, you can find us on all different social media platforms. Anyways, like I said, another really fun game. Really excited to break this one down. So I had to get none other than my brother, my younger brother. I can't call him a little brother anymore. Hayden Peterson. You can find him on Twitter at HPOKC. Hayden, what'd you think? I mean, just give me quickly your thoughts from tonight and maybe just in general of these first, 8 games of the Thunder season so far.
Thunder are fun again.
Yeah.
My quick summary. It's fun to watch them. Seemed like more fans showed up tonight too. I know it was a Thursday night game, not a Tuesday, but
see, I kind of didn't think there was as much tonight as there were Tuesday nights for Tuesday night's game.
I think there was definitely more.
Really?
It looked
okay,
like
well,
to
good.
me.
I hope so because the fans have absolutely been better. And Jacob and I were there last Thursday. It was a little more bare than the first 2 games were. I actually was talking to somebody at the concession stand, and she told me, she was like, honestly, the first 2 home games were great, like really impressive. Yeah. It was nice to see those people back. And then last Thursday, not as much. Regardless, I think I'm with you. This team, there's a lot of excitement behind them. They're playing a really fun brand of basketball right now. These young guys are showing signs of improvement, all things that we'll break down. But it was great to see more people. And formerly known as the Peak, I always want to refer to it as the Peak, but in Paycom Center. So I'm with you, Hayden. A lot of fun stuff. And even though this was a loss, not quite as fun as the last 2 post games we've done, I think we still have a fun one to break down here, Hayden. So I have my big takeaways. And honestly, this was such an interesting game because there were a couple that really stood out. Like, obviously, I need to put these in my takeaways, but there were a lot of others I thought about putting in here. There are a lot of interesting things that we can break down this game, but the 5 I settled on. The first and most obvious, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander shines once again. Superstar Shai now has 30-plus points in 5 of his last 7 games. Hayden, quickly, obviously we'll get into these in more detail later in the podcast. Your initial thoughts on Shai's game tonight?
Yeah, I mean, you summed it up. He's a superstar. You can't be stopped. I think, in my opinion, definition of a superstar is he can go score whenever he wants, take the game over, and he's done that in the 8 games so far.
And score on all 3 levels, which we saw again tonight. I think that's spot on. Speaking of Shai, Hayden, this was interesting. Last night, Tuesday night, last game is what I meant. Shai and Giddy were staggered. We had not seen them play much together. In fact, Giddy didn't even play the last 3 minutes of the game. Tonight, not exactly, but pretty close. I mean, their minutes were essentially mirrored. I thought that was interesting and also great to see. And you obviously know that Mark is making that an emphasis to try and get them build chemistry and synergy on the court. And I just found that interesting and stark contrast to Tuesday night's game.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's good that Mark's making that happen, but we'll touch on to it later. But
yeah, there were some really good things. And then there were some things that the offense didn't flow quite as well at times, but I thought it was much better than Tuesday night.
Yep, I agree.
Speaking of Josh Giddey, another duo here, Lou and Giddey. I thought Lou and Giddey really stepped up tonight. They were the 2 outside of Shai. That's not to say other Thunder players did not. There's certainly many honorable mentions in this game, but I thought Lou and Giddey were really the 2 alongside Shai that stepped up, which was kind of cool because even though the Thunder didn't win tonight, their quote-unquote big 3, minus Chet, who's out for the season, right? It was cool to see them all be able to contribute at such a high level at the same time. Again, even if the synergy isn't quite there yet, I thought that was a step in the right direction.
Yep, absolutely.
And then Thunder points in the paint against a big Denver Nuggets team. Obviously, you have Nikola Jokic, right? But even some of their other bigs, I mean, they're obviously much bigger down low than the Thunder, and yet the Thunder outscored them in the paint 72-46.
Yeah, and they held Jokic to 2 points in the first half, which I think is more impressive.
Yeah, right. Yeah, another great point. Which leads me to my final point. That wasn't why they lost the game. The reason they lost the game, or one of the main reasons they lost the game, was the Thunder's 3-point shooting compared to the Nuggets 3-point shooting. So Thunder were able to outscore the Nuggets in the paint, which is why they were able to remain competitive. But the Nuggets were red hot from outside.
Yeah, that first quarter was unbelievable. I was watching the TV just like, holy shit. Yeah. Are they going to miss?
Yeah, and it was absurd. It's really cool to see Murray play at that level again. But you had guys like KCP and who else?
Is it Reed?
Reed. Some Reed guy. I didn't know he's a third-year player. Yeah. Gosh, Barton's not on this team anymore. There's somebody similar to KCP.
Morris hit a couple.
Yeah. I don't know. Regardless, there were some random people hitting shots, but the main one there was Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon had an incredible game, but mainly an incredible first quarter. First half. He actually outscored Shai, I believe.
He did. I think it's 22-21.
Yeah. Ooh, crazy. So anyways, those are my big takeaways. I have some honorable mentions that we can get into a little later if we have some extra time, Hayden. But just quickly, I'm going to go step-by-step game summary. Going to get your thoughts here and there in case I miss anything. We aren't going to spend too much time on this, but just to give our listeners maybe who weren't able to listen who to view, or even those who were, just a quick, fresh recap. First quarter, got to start with the starting lineup. This was the first repeat starting lineup I believe we've seen, Hayden. Shai, Giddey, Dort, Poku, JRE. I don't even remember what game it was that they had that starting lineup, but this was the second game that starting lineup appeared. And I found that one interesting. Poku and JRE, I think that's kind of the starting lineup we all expected coming into the season. But with Daignault, these rotations have been very fluid. Just quickly, any thoughts on the starting lineup for tonight? Why maybe this lineup for the Nuggets?
I think maybe just adding Poku's length in there with Jokic might have been a factor, just to kind of disrupt some shots. But to me, it kind of feels like might be the starting lineup that's going to settle in a little bit. I mean, obviously, it's not going to be locked in. We'll see a lot more lineups, but to me, it kind of feels like with Poku, I guess you can say coming out a little bit. I feel like this is kind of what Mark's going to lean on a little bit more as the season goes on.
That's fair. And I thought one of my coworkers today brought up a good point. Look, Poku's still going to have a role with this team if he continues to play this way throughout the season. Right. Throughout this season, he will still have a role with this team, maybe even a significant role with this team when Chet comes back next season. But I thought my coworker brought up a good point, Hayden, when he mentioned we're almost seeing. I mean, it's a good opportunity for Poku to develop and expand his game, being thrown in certain positions, certain lineups that he otherwise wouldn't be. But it's also a good opportunity for the Thunder to see maybe kind of what Chet will look like in some of these lineups by putting Poku in there.
Right. Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting point. It's obviously they're not identical players by any means, outside them both being 7 feet plus tall, but
and white.
Fascinating and white. And Chet can actually hit 3-point shots. And regardless, I think they do play fairly similar roles. And I thought that was an interesting point. Now, rough start for the Thunder. The Nuggets start the game out on a 13-0 run. Daignault calls a timeout. It looked ugly to begin with. I'm like, oh my gosh, I might be covering the first blowout of the season. The Nuggets shot 77% from 3. The Thunder shot 28% from 3. And half as many attempts. So not only did the Nuggets shoot 77% from 3, but they doubled the Thunder's 3-point shot attempts. Just kind of to that point, the Nuggets had 30 points from behind the arc. They were 10 of 13, but it was Shai that kept the Thunder in the game. It really, in that first quarter, Shai got off to an incredible scoring streak, kept his scoring streak going from the previous 2 games, had 17 points in the first quarter on super efficient scoring. It was just pretty incredible. And like you mentioned, Hayden, earlier, Jokic goes scoreless, only shot 1 shot from the field, which was really impressive considering, like I said, the starter, like you said, the starting lineup that the Thunder went with.
Yeah.
Second quarter, a lot of the same, honestly. Not a whole lot of notes here in the second quarter. There's a little mini run there, and we'll get your thoughts here, Hayden. The second unit, highlighted by Poku diving for that loose ball. I don't even remember who it was, but Poku got a hand on it, got a deflection. Instead of letting the player just, the Nuggets player go and just get the ball, recover it, and, and just try and recoup on defense, he dives for the loose ball. He's able to get the steal. He kicks it, I believe, to Kenrich Williams, who found Dort for a fast break slam dunk. And that kind of ignited a mini run. That's the kind of stuff you want to see from Poku. And that's the stuff we have not seen from him, really since he's been in OKC.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen a lot of people say that it seems like he's finding his role in the team. And I think stuff like that, especially when you mentioned, Chet coming back next season, that's going to be the type of stuff that he's going to have to do if he wants to stay on the court.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. The Nuggets hit 13 total first half three, just kind of some first half recaps. 13 total first half threes to the Thunder's 3 3-point shots. No Baisley or Wiggins in the first half. In fact, no Wiggins in the game in general, which again isn't necessarily like shocking or alarming or anything of that nature. This is just, Daigneault's told us about this every single post game. He's trying to switch up the rotations, but there are some themes here, and we'll get into that. Baisley's one of them. Giddey and Shai minutes weren't staggered, but basically mirrored. That was a note that I had here to end the half. We're going to get into that, obviously, in more detail. Third quarter happens. Muscala and Baisley start now. So Baisley's first minutes come to start the second half. And Muscala got in there, I believe, towards the end of the second quarter. He ends up starting as well with the three guard/forwards, Shai, Giddey, and Dort. I thought Nick Gallo had a really good point. Despite Denver being in the driver's seat of the game, to this point, the Thunder had to outscore them 42-22 in the paint, which is a thing that we're obviously going to get into. Thunder had a very big run, led by the team getting stops and pushing the ball in transition. Like the defense is something we could touch on every single game, Hayden. I don't have it here, my big takeaways, but it was a huge catalyst yet again. J-Dub was the first sub of the second half. Yet again, he was the first sub in the first half as well. Shai had 31 points, 10 of 13 shooting, 11-11 from the line, and there were still 3 minutes and 28 seconds in the quarter, which is just absolutely absurd. And to end the third, OKC outscored Denver by 16.
Jeez.
I mean, it was a pretty impressive quarter, Hayden. Anything else that really stood out to you there in the third that you can think of?
Oos got loose a little bit there. I was really impressed with him. He wasn't forcing anything, but he was making some really good plays, and I think he played a big part in that big run they had.
That's spot on. I actually had him kind of there in the honorable mentions. Yeah. Maybe we can get into it in a little more detail here in a little bit, but I could not agree more. I thought he was cutting to the basket, playing within the flow of the offense. Once that 3-point shot gets going consistently, he has a really good stroke and a really good form.
Pretty.
And then obviously he plays solid defense on the other end of the floor. So I think that's spot on. Fourth quarter, way less notes here, Hayden. Jamal Murray quarter, he pretty much just took over. The Thunder got outscored 29-15. That was pretty much the game. And unfortunately, maybe the biggest point here is the Thunder didn't really get Shai the ball. They pretty much were just kind of taking what the Denver defense gave them, and that was anything that was not Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And I love Shai trusting in his teammates. For example, we talked about Tuesday night's game, him looking for Lou for that open shot after he had it going. But they really just and maybe that's kind of something we'll get into with the Giddey and Shai lineups. Chase didn't really have the ball in his hands there down the stretch, and that's honestly unacceptable if they are trying to win that game, which they were. We saw Muscala come in there towards the end. The Thunder were absolutely trying to win this game. I think it's a little unacceptable that Shai didn't touch the ball as much as he did down the stretch.
Yeah, I agree. And like you mentioned, he's trusting his teammates, and Giddey had a good game. But when Shai was passing the ball up, there was a couple plays there, especially at the beginning of the fourth quarter when Giddey tried to do a little too much. And I think that stuff, still a young team, obviously. We'll learn as we go, but I think Shai is also going to learn how to handle, those double teams that come at him late in the game. And then also like Giddey and Trey Mann and those types of players will learn how to, make plays off of each other without Shai.
I think that's a very good point. And then, like I said, we'll get into this in some of our main big takeaways, dive into them in a little more detail. So this is about perfect. We're at about the halfway mark here, Hayden. Let's go ahead and just dive into these big takeaways in more detail. We can spend a lot of time on these. And if there's any others, like I said, that I missed, feel free to add those here at the end. But I really want your thoughts on some of these. The big one here, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just continues to shine. 17 points in the first quarter. He ends up having 37 points tonight, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, I believe 1 block. I don't have that here that I typed in, but I can go back and look at that. I'm pretty sure he had 1 block. The biggest thing, Hayden, 13 of 17 from the field. Just absurdly efficient. And you're probably thinking, well, then how did he get 37 points? Well, because he went 11-11 from the free throw line, and he still has only missed 1 shot from the free throw line. He's playing at a superstar level. Just for context, he's averaging 32.3 points per game, 6.3 assists per game, 4.7 rebounds a game, 2.6 steals per game, 1.2 blocks per game, and all of this on 54.5% from the field, 98.9% free throw percentage. Like I said, he only has missed 1 free throw, 63.9% true shooting percentage. I mean, we're not just talking about an all-star right now. We're talking about all NBA. And again, a very limited sample size here. But Shai has been fantastic. Hayden, your thoughts on Shai's game tonight? And you can kind of wrap a bow on it and talk about your thoughts of his play throughout these first 8 games of the season as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's been unbelievable. And the thing that's really stood out to me is it seemed last year he was almost like using.
Okay, sorry, really quick. Eamon corrected me, 0 blocks tonight, which is fine. But also, this is kind of interesting, and maybe you'll get into this, Hayden, but 0 attempted threes.
Yep.
And I believe he was asked about that in the post game. He said, honestly, I didn't even realize it. I'm just playing basketball, which is, you love to see that. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean, that kind of goes into the point I was about to say. Last year during the games, it seemed like he was trying to almost practice his bag a little bit by doing, the sidestep threes he did all the time at the beginning of last year, and even some of his mid-range stuff. And it seems like this year it's almost like he spent the offseason thinking, okay, this is where I can get my buckets, and that's what he's doing exactly. He gets in the mid-range, creates a space, gets to the rim at ease like he always has. But, the three-pointers, he's not forcing them at all, and he's not even really looking for them, which I think is great to see. And it's his efficiencies, showing from that. What'd you say? He's shooting 60-something from the field. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Averaging 32 points per game.
Tonight, he had 37 points on 84.7% true shooting.
That's
which
ridiculous.
is just, yeah, he's not missing.
Yeah.
And that's why I was so disappointed. I think, he's been so good, especially this season early on. I don't want to say demanding the ball because that's such like a kind of it has such a negative term around or a negative vibe around it. But he was making sure he had the ball in his hands to close some of these past couple of games tonight. And I think some of this may be because Josh was back in the lineup. And like I said, we'll get into this. But he wasn't quite as demanding. He wasn't quite as assertive maybe there down the stretch. But that doesn't matter. I mean, that's part of it. But the other part is getting the ball to Shai. And I understand the guys, they know that Shai's being absolutely smothered down the stretch by some of Denver's defenders there. But I would have liked to see Shai get more touches because that's how you're going to win basketball games, especially with so much youth on this team and the development stages that they're at in this season. So, at this point of the season. So I don't know. What were your thoughts there about Shai down the stretch?
Yeah. You mentioned Giddey, and honestly, one of the most things I'm excited for during the season is to watch how Giddey can kind of adapt with playing with Shai, especially down the stretch. Because last year we barely got to see that at all. It kind of seemed like right after the All-Star break last season, they started to click a little bit, and then that's when Giddey got shut down, or one of them got shut. I think it was Giddey with the hip injury, so they really didn't, get that chemistry together. So I think Giddey's going to learn as the season goes on that Thunder fans might not like to hear this, but Giddey's never going to be a great, scorer, great shot creator. And I think Giddey's going to learn how to make plays, without having the ball in his hands, without Shai, without him trying to force something scoring, if that makes sense.
I think that it absolutely makes sense. Not only does it make sense, Hayden, it is a perfect transition into big takeaway number 2. It's almost like you've done this before. Hayden, for those that don't know, Hayden and I, as brothers, are constantly texting throughout Thunder games, especially with our dad, which is a ton of fun. One of these days, Hayden, we're going to get dad on a podcast.
Get him on the pod.
Jacob and I, and Kamiar and I, even Nick and Justin and I, we all have talked about really, I think Jacob's dad, Kamiar's dad, and our dad would just have a blast. We need to do a dad pod sometime.
Yeah, so on Father's
Day. There we go. I like it. I like it a lot. Now, like I said, really good transition because compared to like I said, Tuesday night, and the Thunder got the win there. And Giddey wasn't that great. Obviously, his first game back, coming back from the ankle injury, but Daigneault decided to close with Trey Mann alongside Shai, alongside Dort, because they needed that offensive spark. And Trey was, competing defensively. But it was fascinating throughout the majority of that game. He staggered both of them for the most part. They really only played together to start the game. Tonight was the exact opposite. They didn't mirror each other's, minutes exactly. Shai played 35 minutes to Giddey's 31, but it was very close. And Hayden, you had a really good stat that you shared with me in regard to Shai and Giddey. You also had another one about Trey Mann and Giddey, but I want to hold on to that until towards the end of this point that we're discussing. But do you have that stat there about Shai and Giddey's minutes?
Yeah, so I tweeted out about it, but I was saying when Shai goes off the floor, I would really like to see Giddey and Trey Mann minutes. And I didn't realize it was this bad, but Trey Mann and Josh Giddey, NBA has them logged at playing 1 minute together, which is probably not even a minute if it's that.
For this game or the season as a whole?
For this game.
Okay, yeah, but
Just
still,
yeah.
I mean, it's not very much for a season because Giddey was hurt.
Well,
but
this is also interesting. I just saw this. Trey Mann and Shai only played a minute together too.
Oh, that's
which
very
is the
interesting.
mirroring with
now, right? Exactly. So Shai and Giddey are Daigneault's trying to mirror their minutes tonight, right, which means that Trey Mann's playing that primary backup point guard role, which is fascinating as well. But what was the stat that you told me though before the podcast about Shai and Giddey's minutes? If you don't have it in front of you, that's okay. But I like I said, they almost played identical minutes together, which I really love to see.
They played 32 minutes together.
Yeah, okay. So of Shai's 35 and Giddey only played 30. I don't know. These are
Shai's 35, Giddey's 31. They played. It was like 31.8 was it?
Oh, okay, yeah, there we go. That makes sense. So essentially Giddey played 32 minutes.
Right.
Wow. So basically anytime Giddey was on the court, it was alongside Shai, and Shai just got in a little earlier than he did at certain points in the game. That's fascinating. I thought it worked really well at times. I actually thought it looked much better than it did earlier in the season prior to the ankle injury because they were all able to score. And we weren't going to get into Dort as well, but Giddey had his best game probably of the season. A lot of that due to the ankle injury, like I mentioned, but 16 points on 7 of 14 shooting, 2 of 4 from 3, which was huge. His 2 threes there really kind of kept the Thunder alive in the third. And I thought he played a really good game on both ends of the floor. He was much more aggressive and assertive, but it didn't take away from Shai necessarily until clutch time when Shai was being smothered. They were double teaming him, and Giddey tried to kind of, and not just Giddey, Dort as well, but they tried to kind of take control and take scoring to their own hands. But there wasn't a lot of like chemistry in regards of Shai and Giddey playing off one another. That's going to come in time. They only played literally half, maybe even less than that, of a season together last year before each of them had different injuries at different times. And then obviously Giddey gets the injury this season. Shai was hurt during the preseason. They really haven't had much time to gel.
Yep.
But I thought today looked much better. They obviously looked like they were able to coexist. And the next step is just finding that chemistry. How can Daigneault help blend them, right? Like, can we get some Shai and Giddey pick and roll, pick and pops? How can you have two primary ball handlers and playmakers on the floor at the same time and have that affect each of them, benefit each of them and also the rest of their teammates? Is kind of what I'm thinking at this point.
Yep. No, I agree with you that I was going to say that, get them in some two-man games and pick and roll, pick and pop, especially when they're just denying Shai from getting the ball. That's going to be a way to get him open and also maybe get Giddey downhill.
And when Giddey's knocking down threes like that, he's not scared to take it. I mean, that opens up the floor so much for each of them. Yep. Shai's going to have to do that as well, catch and shoot threes. That's one area that he can really improve on. Obviously, Shai didn't even take a 3 tonight, which is fine. Yeah. But then being able to hit and knock down, catch and shoot threes is a big thing there. Just really quickly, SGA and Giddy both had very positive quotes about one another post-game. Shai said, "Josh is a really good player. No matter who you are, it's easy to play with him. It's always fun having him out there." And then I believe Giddey had a similar quote. He's so crafty, and I think the best thing about him is he's just a willing passer. He's been on a tear. He's playing elite basketball. So essentially, he's playing at this superstar level, and yet he's still giving the ball to us. And so obviously no bad vibes there. They're all, on the same page. It's just a matter of getting time together. So that's something I'm going to be following. We went a little long those first 2 points, Hayden, so we'll try and go through the rest of these a little quicker. we talked about Lou and Giddy both stepping up. We talked a lot about Giddy there. Let's go ahead and designate this segment to Lou. I thought Lou had a really good game tonight, especially in transition. 19 points, 3 rebounds, 8 of 15 from the floor. The one thing I don't like is that he needs to be able to take like 6 threes like he did tonight, but he's only 1 of 6 from 3. He continues to struggle there, but his finishing around the rim was much better, and he continues to provide a spark for this team by his defense, his elite defense, and being able to create deflections, turnovers, havoc that result in the Thunder being able to push the ball in transition, which is when they're at their best. Speeding up the game, I think, is what Lou's really good at. And all of a sudden, you blink, you look up, and Lou's on the other end of the floor, ready to get a receiving pass from Giddy or Kenrich Williams and finish around the rim. I thought he was much better finishing around the rim tonight.
Yeah. And it seems like every time the Thunder go on one of their big runs when they're coming, back from 15 down, it's when Lou's playing his best. And you mentioned it, when we get out in transition, we're at our best, and it usually starts with a Lou Dort deflection or Lou steal, something on the defensive end. And it's been good tonight it was good to watch him finish around the rim better, because if anybody follows me on Twitter, I've been really critical on Lou so far on the offensive end. And
because you like him so much.
Because I love him so much. I have high expectations. But no, watching him finish around the rim in that third quarter got me fired up. I was really excited to see that.
Yeah. No, I agree. He was a huge catalyst in the third as well. Oh, gosh. What was I going to say? I was talking about his defense. Oh, speaking of his defense, Dort mentioned, so we talked about, again, talking a lot about Giddey and Shai and Lou and how they all kind of were intertwined tonight. And I think a lot of that's because of how Dort played them tonight. They were all kind of intertwined. And one thing that Dort mentioned is that, not having Shai and Giddy on the floor and having Lou in that second unit was because he wanted him on Jamal Murray, because he thought he did such a good job on him, especially in the first half, right? And then Jamal really got it going in the fourth. So just more credit to Lou defensively, guarding these elite players night in, night out, and still being able to do what he does offensively, give his team a boost and a spark is just really, really impressive. So, and this is one that we can really touch on quickly. Thunder points in the paint. The Thunder outscored the Nuggets 72-46 points in the paint, and that is what kept them in the game in the first half. It's what kept them in the game and helped, again, kind of led to the catalyst, like I keep mentioning, in the third quarter when they're pushing the ball in transition. This team isn't taking a lot of threes, and nor are they making them, obviously. But they're so good at creating around the basket, whether it's obviously Shai, Lou, Giddy floaters, even some of these guys like Poku, like Muscala, Kenrich Williams, and this is my chance to kind of mention J-Dub here. Yeah. J-Dubs obviously has a lot of trust from Mark Daigneault. He's getting a lot of minutes compared to guys like Baisley, some others. He obviously has some trust from Daigneault, and he does such a good job of moving off ball, cutting to the rim, and even just finding open space. For example, there was a play where he almost sagged off towards the baseline, almost out of bounds, comes back, waits for the defense to react to Giddy driving in the lane, is able to find the opening between defenders, which leads for a wide open bounce pass that Giddy can find him for into a layup. So that's just examples of how this undersized Thunder team continues to score in the paint. Curious if you have any additional thoughts, not just tonight, but this is a thing we've been seeing. Offensive rebounds, points in the paint for an undersized Thunder team. Hayden, what are your thoughts?
Well, it starts with Shai, and then you mentioned, they're learning how to cut off of Shai drives too. Jalen Williams is great at it, and it kind of shows off the team's basketball IQ. Something I think Giddy will get better at as the year goes on as well, is kind of cutting off those Shai drives, finding the gaps, and getting some easy buckets.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. Great point. And then the last one here, obviously I'm seeing some some questions and some comments in the chats. Please keep them coming. We will finish by going through those right here at about 30 minutes. We're going to hit our last big point here, Hayden. Then we'll finish by going through some of these comments in the chat. I appreciate all of you tuning in. Last one here I have is unfortunately a negative. I didn't do positive and negatives tonight because I feel like I've gotten a little redundant with that. I typically end with the positives and begin with the negatives, but tonight we're ending on a negative because that's just how I have it here in the doc. Thunder's three-point shooting has been horrendous, and I wish I had a little more time tonight. I had a baby wake up right before the podcast, or I would have given the Thunder's three-point shooting percentage for the entire season.
29.5.
Oh, hey, look at that. That's why I have Hayden on.
Tweeted it out right before the pod.
Thank you. 29.5 on the season, and tonight they go 20% from three. 6 of 29. Granted, they caught up with the Nuggets in terms of 3-point attempts. Thunder were the Nuggets were 18 of 31. Thunder 6 of 29. That's got to improve if they want to be able to compete with these teams. That's just kind of gravy for the season. They are able to continue to improve on that and get better this season. But if they truly are going to, we're seeing they're able to compete with teams like the Nuggets, like the Mavericks, like the Clippers. But they're going to actually beat these teams and, like Presti says, quote unquote, declare themselves. If they truly are going to end the tank for this season, a 3-point percentage is going to have to go up.
Absolutely. It's a difference maker tonight in many games so far.
Yeah, I know. I think that was his the biggest reason probably the Thunder lost the game tonight was 3-point discrepancy between the two teams.
Yep.
All right. So that was just about spot on in terms of timing. We're going to go ahead and go through some comments and questions here. I'll have Hayden answer some of them. I'll answer some of them. Then we'll go ahead and get out of here because we have another game coming here in, I believe, in 48 hours, which is pretty exciting. Thunder have a pretty tough stretch coming up. Some really good tests. So knock on wood, unless there's something I don't know about, Thunder stayed healthy tonight. I think that's a positive we can end on, Hayden, instead of ending on the Thunder 3-point shooting. It's great to see Giddey back. Great to see J-Dub back. Hopefully he gets that mask off because I think that will obviously help him, make him a little more comfortable. Shai playing at this level, looking healthy, etc., etc. Joseph says, Bays was Bays' phase. Baisley is not one that I mentioned. Like I said, I had some honorable mentions that we just don't really have time for tonight, but one that I listed here was no Wiggins. Again, that's not like a big thing because Wiggins played so much in the preseason, and obviously to start the season. That was just an opportunity to get guys like Jang more time. Kendrick Williams in tonight where he didn't play on Tuesday night. Not worried about Wiggins not playing, but a very limited Baisley. He started in the second half. He actually has some great contributions defensively. But he just has boneheaded decisions that can't keep that result in him not being able to stay on the floor. I'm going to be honest at this point, when Usman Jang is getting more trust than Darius Baisley from Coach Daynault, obviously Poku getting a ton of time tonight compared to Baisley. Feels like Baisley's time with the Thunder is kind of written on the wall at this point, Hayden.
Yep, sad to admit it, but I agree with you.
And Baisley has some great flashes. He's played really good basketball through stretches. The boneheaded decisions just continue to pop up on each end of the floor. Alex, to that point, said Poku was physical as hell. And I love what Jacob has mentioned throughout the past couple of podcasts, really since the season started. Physicality isn't necessarily just bulking up another 30 to 40 pounds and being able to bang down low with Jokic. It's being physical down low. It's more of a mentality. And Hayden, I think that's the reason that Poku had, I'm going to have to go back to the box score here. But Poku had 27 minutes. That was the least of the starters, but it was more than anybody else on the bench by 5 minutes. So pretty impressive stuff. Obviously, Poku's gaining trust with his coaching staff. Kind of goes back to the original point that I think Baisley is losing some of that trust. 37 without threes sounds like him. A lot of comments about Shai not attempting a single three. Another really good point. 37 points on that efficiency without shooting a three and with his team shooting so poorly from three, not spacing the floor from him. Hayden, that's pretty elite. Pretty elite.
To say the least.
Eamon also said a lot of experimentation with the roster and rotations. J.W. McKinney first off the bench instead of Trey. That's a good point. We did not see Trey Mann first off the bench like we have recently. Trey did get obviously some burn tonight, but only got 17 minutes, which was still second most off the bench, but Kenrich had 22 compared to Trey Mann 17, followed by J-Dub's 14. So yeah, definitely something to continue to keep an eye on. A really good point. Let's see. David mentions he's pretty angry when the Thunder missed so many threes in a row. He talks about Chip. Like, did he get fired? Did he just go away? Can we trade Bays, JRE, Wiggins for real shooters? Thunder have never had shooters ever. Look, those points and frustrations are valid. I would take Wiggins out of there because he's played really well. JRE has as well at times, but he has not played as well as I hoped he would start the season. And tonight was not one of his better nights. He had some threes early on, but the Thunder really kind of trying to feed him early, and it was not working, which kind of led to that 13-0 run, I think, from the Nuggets. So I get the frustration, but keep the faith. Again, I think that's something that will continue to hopefully improve this season. But by next season, we really need to see an improvement. Let's see. Kieran mentions Shai leads all guards and blocks. He's top 3 in steals, top 4 in points. If the shooting around Shai gets better, Shai could definitely make a All NBA team this season. Hayden, your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, we've touched on Shai a ton already in the pod, but yeah, I mean, right now he's going to be an All NBA team without a doubt.
Ecool asked, why is Shai not taking threes? How many has he taken over all games this season? I don't have those pulled up in front of me, and we're going a little long here. But he didn't really need to, is the question. He was taking what the defense was giving him. And I don't, he doesn't want to just jack up threes. He knows he can get to the rim, he can get to the mid-range at will at this point, and can make them. So why take difficult threes if you don't have to, is kind of my thought.
Yep, I agree.
So last couple ones here, because we're going a little long. Meek Leak, do you think we should be playing Giddey and Shai alternately instead of trying to have them both out there together when we are trying to win games? What are your thoughts, Hayden? We talked a little bit about the Shai and Giddey mirroring, but why do we think we saw that tonight compared to Tuesday night? I kind of think is what Meek's getting at.
Yeah, and I think Daignault's trying to make a point to get their chemistry better than it's ever been, because they need to. I mean, Giddey's obviously going to be a pretty big part of our team going forward, and getting him and Shai to learn how to play off each other efficiently is going to really be a big factor in determining how good the Thunder can be. So I think it is important for them to mirror some minutes, especially in the first quarter and ending games. But I would kind of like to see Daignault alternate their minutes a little bit when Shai goes out. Maybe, bring in Trey Mann to pair with Giddey, or Jalen Williams to kind of let Giddey take over that second group a little bit more. I would like to see that, but I think it is important to mirror their minutes late in the games.
Could not agree more. I think that's pretty spot on, but I would like to see, like you said, a little more staggering, just because I think that's when this team will be at their best.
Right.
But obviously, we need Shai and Giddey to be able to coexist, and this is the perfect season to be able to do that. This is kind of a transition season.
Exactly.
Presley, let's talk about transitioning. Right, like it's not the full-on tank like it was last season, at least at this point with Shai and others playing at this level, if they can continue to keep that up. So it's still not the go all out and try and get play in or playoffs this season. It's the season to try these kind of things, try these kind of lineups, see who fits, see who doesn't. So that way next season you get your next lottery pick or whatever it may be. You're really kind of ready to hit the ground running and start competing again. So last one here, Kieran, with Shai clearly taking another step forward, and this is related, with Shai taking another step forward, what does the ideal Giddey development look like to you? Great question. David even mentions in the chat. Great question, Kieran. Hayden, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I touched on it in the last question. I think his next step in his development is, getting in that second group without Shai, taking over, learning how to take over, whether that's scoring or making plays for other teammates. And then, pairing that with them closing games together, learning how to play off Shai when the fourth quarter comes and the teams are trying to shut him off, and figuring out how to take some of the slack off of the team not having, or I guess the team having Shai, but not having the opportunities that he'll have when he's going to be facing double teams and face guarding in those fourth quarters.
I think you're exactly spot on. How can they build chemistry on court? Obviously they like each other, like playing with one another, but how can they really benefit each other on court? Can Daignault put them in the right positions? And then to answer Kieran's question specifically, Giddey's got to be able to knock down outside shots, and Shai has to be better with his catch and shoot shooting, I think, because Giddey's going to be able to create so many open looks for him. Those are kind of the two things specifically I'm looking for on the offensive end of the floor. Defensively, I just hope that Giddey's able to find ways to utilize his length and his strength and his size, and kind of follow the example that Shai's leading on the defensive end of the floor. And that's how they can coexist, and we can see this team play at a really high level in the future. Yep. Hayden, I think that's all I got. You have any parting thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I've been super happy with the Thunder so far. 4-4 is not bad at all.
Not bad at all. We will see what the Thunder have in store moving forward. I'm actually looking at this. Justin has his highlighted in yellow. I was going to try and tell you all who's like covering which games. So, okay, here we go. Get the post-game outro going. So, here in let's see, Sunday night they play again, that's actually our group podcast. Then Monday they turn around, they play the Pistons at home. That's going to be a really fun one. 2 young teams, young squads going head to head. And then 11-9, that's 2 days later on next Wednesday, you'll be stuck with me again for another matchup with the Bucks. Like I said, the Thunder schedule gets pretty tough here. After that, but they have the Raptors, they have the Celtics. Then it eases up just a tad. But a really good test for this young Thunder team moving forward. Hoping to see them work on a lot of things we touched on today. Shout out Hayden for joining me. It's always fun talking basketball. We've been doing it since we were very little, so it's fun to bring it to a platform like this one. Appreciate Hayden jumping on. Appreciate all of you in the chat. All of you following on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, you name it. You guys are the best. You gals are the best. Be sure to subscribe. We'll send you some stickers. Thanks again for tuning in. A lot of fun things to be excited about with this Thunder team. So, parting thoughts, as always,
Thunder up.